My name is John. I'm 29. And the last thing my brother Michael said to me before he pushed me out of his life was, "You'll always be Dad's biggest disappointment." He said it while standing in the kitchen of our family home, his perfectly polished hand gripping a glass of scotch, toasting his engagement to Olivia, the same Olivia I had dated for 3 years. The same Olivia who had accepted my proposal with my grandmother's ring before my father persuaded her that I wasn't suitable marriage material. Michael had maneuvered the whole situation, feigning the role of the supportive brother who only wanted Olivia's happiness. What he truly craved was to seize the one thing that was exclusively mine. That was 1.5 years ago. Today I'm standing in the offices of Thompson Sterling LLP, the legal firm managing Dad's estate, observing Michael's expression fall as the attorney reads the will aloud. To my son Michael, I leave my disappointment that he never grasped the importance of earning what he was given. The lawyer's voice reverberates in the mahogany-paneled conference room. To my son John, whom I neglected to value while I was living, I leave all my other possessions. But let me rewind, because this tale doesn't begin with payback. It starts with a whole life of being second-rate. Growing up, Michael was the favored son. 3 years my senior, effortlessly handsome and naturally charismatic. Everything was simple for him. Dad would light up whenever he entered a room, his expression glowing in a way it never did for me. When Michael was accepted into Stanford, Dad took him for a celebratory dinner at the yacht club. When I graduated at the top of my class in engineering, he mumbled, "That's good, son," without lifting his eyes from his financial report. Michael attended Stanford on Dad's dime, majoring in business administration, which he promptly left behind after graduating to launch a tech startup. In contrast, I held down 3 jobs to finance my own way through engineering school, obtaining my Bachelor of Science and, ultimately, my master's to become a civil engineer. Dad never came to my graduation ceremony. He was skiing in Aspen with Michael, celebrating his brother securing $1 million in seed funding. The dynamic was established from the start and never changed. Michael was the prince, and I was the laborer. When I met Olivia at a charity gala 5 years ago, I believed I had finally discovered someone who appreciated me for who I was. She was a corporate lawyer, brilliant and driven, with a sharp mind and an easy smile. For 3 years, we constructed something meaningful together. She would sit with me after my grueling 14-hour days on site, listening as I discussed my projects and the communities I was helping to rebuild. She told me I was remarkable, that my dedication was a true asset. Then Dad began to meddle. It started with subtle remarks. "Olivia seems like a fine woman," he would comment. "It's a shame she's wasting her time with someone who can never provide her with the life she deserves." When Olivia joined us for family meals, Dad would bombard her with questions about her firm, her ambitions, and her future plans, all while barely recognizing my existence. Michael, predictably, was suddenly present wherever Olivia and I were. He would appear on our dates, claiming it was a coincidence. He would text her directly about family gatherings to which I was strangely not invited. He would share photos of himself at business conferences, always making sure to tag Olivia if she was captured in the background. The breaking point arrived at Dad's 65th birthday celebration. I had been working extra shifts for months to save for a surprise fishing trip to Alaska. Dad had always talked about wanting to go there. I was so proud of the gift, so thrilled to finally do something that would make him light up the way he did for Michael. Instead, Michael announced his engagement to Olivia. She had somehow acquired my grandmother's ring, the very one Dad had always said would belong to the son who married first. Olivia looked awkward, apologetic, but she didn't object. Dad beamed more brightly than I had ever seen, embracing Michael and whispering loud enough for everyone to hear, "Finally, someone worthy of the Sterling name." I departed the party early. Olivia came after me, attempting to explain, but I could hardly hear her over the pounding in my head. He helped me realize we want different things, she stated. Michael understands the kind of life I need to build. You're so absorbed in your work, in your projects. I need someone who can be a genuine partner in my career. It was Dad's rhetoric coming from Olivia's mouth, and both of us knew it. The following morning, Michael called. His voice was overly smooth, the way it always was when he was about to deliver a blow. I hope there are no hard feelings, John. You know, Dad just wants what's best for everyone. Olivia will be much happier with someone who can properly support her ambitions. You'll always be Dad's biggest disappointment, but at least now you won't be Olivia's too. I ended the call and was devastated for 3 days. Then I pulled myself together and returned to my work, because that's what I had always done. 18 months went by. Michael and Olivia had an extravagant wedding featured in the society columns. I was not invited. Dad, of course, paid for the entire affair and walked Olivia down the aisle with tears of pride. They purchased a home in the most exclusive neighborhood, hosted dinner parties for Olivia's partners, and portrayed the ideal power couple. Meanwhile, I dedicated myself to my work with a focus that was almost fanatical. I launched a nonprofit to build sustainable infrastructure in low-income areas, working 18-hour days and sleeping in my truck between site visits. A local news station did a story on my initiative. Then regional outlets covered it. Then it was featured on a national news network. I won the state's Outstanding Engineer Award, followed by the National Maxwell Prize for Engineering Excellence. A leading technical journal published my research on community infrastructure solutions. MIT invited me to lecture at their engineering school. Dad never acknowledged any of it, but others took note, including the board of directors at Apex Engineering, who offered me the position of Director of Operations, and the Gates Foundation, which awarded me a $500,000 grant to expand my nonprofit's reach nationwide. And Dr. Alex Chen, the head of materials science at MIT, who first became my mentor, then my colleague, and then something more. Alex was nothing like Olivia. He didn't need me to advance his career or polish his image. He loved me for precisely who I was. The man who would stay up all night helping a community board draft a proposal, who would battle city councils for permits for his projects, who would drive 4 hours to a remote site because he knew they counted on him. When Dad suffered a heart attack 6 months ago, I was the one who hurried to the hospital, not Michael, who was in Bali posting on social media about his transformative spiritual journey. I was the one who held his hand before the operation, who consulted with his physicians, who had to make the unbearable choices when his health declined. Michael flew back for the funeral naturally. He looked impeccable in his custom-tailored suit, flawlessly playing the role of the bereaved son for the attendees. He delivered a moving eulogy about what an incredible father he had been, how much he had taught him about love and fortitude. I also spoke briefly about his commitment to his work and his business. I didn't say that he had never once told me he was proud of me, or that he had spent my entire life making me feel inadequate. After the ceremony, Michael cornered me near the floral tributes. "I imagine you expect to inherit something substantial," he said, his voice quiet and cutting. "But Dad and I discussed this at length. He knows I'm the one who will properly uphold the family legacy. You'll receive a token sum, perhaps enough to clear your student debt." He was mistaken. Dad had amended his will 3 months before his death, evidently after seeing the MIT Technology Review article about my work. His lawyer, Mr. Thompson, had attempted to reach Michael to notify him of the revisions, but he had been unreachable, preoccupied with his startup lifestyle. The inheritance wasn't merely financial, though there was a great deal of money. It included the family home, the vacation cabin at Lake Tahoe, the investment portfolio, the art collection, everything except for a single item. Michael inherited Dad's 1982 Ford F-150, the rusted old truck he had always refused to sell despite Mom's years of complaining. But the true inheritance was the letter he had composed to be read with the will. "Michael," Mr. Thompson continued reading, I hope this truck serves as a reminder that worth is not defined by external appearance or popularity, but by dependability and resilience. John has dedicated his life to demonstrating this truth, while you have dedicated yours to ignoring it. I was mistaken to favor you, and I was blind to John's exceptional character. I cannot reverse the harm I've caused, but I can make sure my estate is passed to the son who has already demonstrated he will use it to benefit others, rather than himself. Michael's face had turned pale during the reading, but now a flush was spreading up his neck. "This is absurd," he uttered, his voice trembling. "Dad would never. He wouldn't embarrass me like this." "There is more," Mr. Thompson said softly and went on. "John, you have spent your life earning things that were never just handed to you. You have constructed a career and a reputation founded on merit, skill, and dedication. You have shown that the Sterling name has meaning because of what you have done with it, not because of what you were born into. I am proud of you, and I should have told you that every single day of your life." I felt tears on my face, but my voice remained steady. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson." Michael shot up from his chair, which scraped harshly against the marble floor. "This isn't finished," he hissed. "I'll fight this. Dad was not in his right mind at the end. Anyone could see that." "Mr. Sterling," Mr. Thompson said, "your father underwent a thorough psychiatric assessment before amending his will. He was declared to be entirely of sound mind. He also foresaw that you might challenge the will, which is why he added this clause. Any attempt to contest the will leads to the forfeiture of all bequests, including the truck." Michael's mouth gaped. For the first time in our lives, he was utterly silent. I collected my briefcase and rose to depart. "Michael," I said calmly, "for whatever it's worth, I'm sorry it took Dad's death for him to see us for who we are. I'm sorry he never gave you the opportunity to show you were more than just his favored son. And I'm sorry you never bothered to try." He was still sitting there, staring at the polished table when I left the room. 6 months later, I'm residing in Dad's house, our family home, but it feels entirely new now. I've converted his old office into a central hub for my nonprofit, which now has projects in 12 states. The dining room where Michael announced his engagement is now a meeting space where I consult with other engineers about growing our impact. Alex moved in last month. We're planning to marry in the spring, a small affair in the garden where Mom used to tend her flowers. No society photographers, no grand spectacle, just the people who are important to us, celebrating something authentic. Michael and Olivia divorced 4 months ago. It seems that once the wealth and prestige were gone, there wasn't much holding them together. He moved back to the city, where he's now a sales consultant at a high-end car dealership, attempting to rebuild his social network. Olivia tried to contact me after the divorce, but Alex answered the phone and politely informed her that I had no interest in revisiting the past. I used a portion of Dad's inheritance to create the Sterling Foundation for Sustainable Development, and Michael was invited to the inaugural gala not as family, but as a member of the public. He didn't show up, but he did mail a card. Inside, in his neat handwriting, he had written, "You were always the better son. I just never wanted to see it." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was an admission, and sometimes that is enough. Last week, I received a letter from a young man in a remote Appalachian village whose community was transformed by one of our infrastructure projects. He wrote that he wanted to become an engineer because of the example I had set, that he never realized engineering could be about compassion and not just concrete. I read the letter while sitting in Dad's old armchair, in the office where he used to disregard my accomplishments while lauding Michael's. For the first time since he passed away, I could hear his voice in my head. Not the critical, disapproving tone I had known my whole life, but the voice from his letter. "I am proud of you." Finally, after 29 years, I thought it might be true. The best revenge, as it happens, is not about seeing your rivals fail. It is about creating a life so fulfilling that their judgment of you ceases to matter. It is about demonstrating that you were worthy from the very beginning, even when no one else was able to see it.